Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Journey to Purpose. Today, I have the truly fascinating Linda Kneidinger. Linda, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
First easy question. Linda, you are a coach, a personal coach, but where in the world are you based?
I am based in Southern California. I'm a little bit north of Los Angeles and a little bit south of the lovely Santa Barbara.
Ah, my sister lives in LA. I just love that part of California. It's that strip running up the coast is wonderful. So very jealous, particularly this time of year.
Yeah, I actually just got back from a 2 weeks in Europe and I had the most wonderful time, but I did not see the sunshine for the full 2 weeks. So when I got back, and I'm not originally from here, so I can really appreciate sun and warm weather in the winter time. But when I got back, it was nice to like have the warmth of the sun
Oh,
and
yeah.
holidays together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a Christmas in Malaysia one year, and everyone was like, "Wasn't that miserable?" I was like, What do you mean miserable? There was sun. It was beautiful. Like, I love snow. I love all the stuff, but I'm also down with a hot Christmas. It's all good. Sun makes the world better.
Yes.
So you've had a wonderfully fantastic career, starting off in as an athlete and then going into sports psychology. So let's just talk a bit about you. You know, how you got to where you are now. What you've done on this journey so far.
Sure. It's really funny that I really do feel like I can pinpoint exactly the moment where I became curious about the brain and and behavior. And it was when I was a high school athlete. I was a tennis player, and I was the number one tennis player on my team. But I wasn't like a great tennis player. I had had some lessons, and I was above average athlete, and nobody on my school's team could knock me out of that number one position. But we played other schools that did have fancier tennis players. They were, they country clubs. They did ranking tournaments and things. And I couldn't beat them. And it was a very frustrating experience. And the only advice my coach could ever give me was, you're not thinking enough during matches. He could sort of tell that maybe I didn't play quite the same in a competitive match as I did in practice. And he said, you're not thinking enough. I was a high school student. This was back in the 80s when sports psychology was not even a thing. But I just had a sense that he was wrong. I felt like the more I became consciously aware of what was going on in the match, the tenser I felt and the worse I played. And so I went off to college and I thought I was pre-med. So neuroscience seemed like it was a very popular pre-med major. And I ended up really loving the brain part more than the chemistry part, the medical part. And so I decided, I think I want to shift and pursue something in psychology. And so I have 2 different graduate degrees in psychology. One, we did study a lot of sports psychology. And then just for the practical, getting older and thinking about having a family, I got a degree in school psychology, which in hindsight, when I sort of look at my whole life picture as a journey, I was always helping people to sort of access the best that they could do, figure out what it is about your thinking, your behaviors, whether it's a result of habits or even your own personal neurology, the way you were built, to maximize what you have, whether it was children in school, athletes. Now I work with mostly adults. It's all the same thing. And so it really has been there is a thread in that journey, even though it's looked different at different times.
I always think that one experience leads me to the next one. And I never really knew what the next one was going to be until I got there. But I couldn't have got there having not done the previous step beforehand. It sounds like
Which
you're
is
very
very
much the same.
hard. And I actually speak quite often to groups of either kids in high school or college. I have a few sororities that I work with every year. And we talk about these things because it's really, when you're younger, it's hard to know that. And if you don't have that sort of, I know what I want to be when I grow up, epiphany, it's very stressful. Especially now, people talk about how expensive education is. Well, then you better know exactly what you want to do with that. And yet it is a journey. And like you and I now being on that journey can be like, yeah, each step of it helps you refine. What did you like? What did you not like? But I understand that when people are younger, it is such a stressful thing to feel like I have to make that decision now and it's forever and I better love it. And it is nice to have that hindsight to be able to tell people like, no, take the first step, and it could lead all kinds of great places.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, something else I love about you is your approach to building trust with yourself. And obviously, people don't know this, but you did a skydive. And not because you wanted to chase the adrenaline, but because you wanted to face the fear. So why was that important to you?
Yeah. That was an interesting moment. So, I have two children, and they're in their early 20s, and so I forget exactly what the age is in the United States where you needed to have a parent. When they first came up with the idea, like, we want to go skydiving, but we can't do it on our own, so you have to go. And I was like, no way! That is the most insane thing. Never going to do it. When you're old enough to do it on your own, I will happily go and watch and take pictures, but not happening. And then it was literally the week before, maybe a couple days before my 50th birthday. And, I do like to put my actions where my mouth is, and all these things, all these strategies and things I use to help other people enrich their lives. I do really try to live by them myself. So I felt like, what is something I have like a block about, that I have a fear about? And I know it makes sense to have a fear about jumping out of an airplane, but people do it every day all around the world. It's as safe, it's certainly probably safer than driving your car down the street. So,
Yeah.
Sure, it was scary and fearful, but I felt like, okay, that's something I can drive down the street. There's an airport near me. I can do that, and I can sort of push myself to face something that felt like such an absolute no without a really good reason. And so before I could really think about it too much, I just bought the pass online, went and did it. And people kept saying, like, didn't you want someone to go with you? I was like, no, I really didn't. Like, I wanted to have an experience with myself where I was really not feeling like I had to manage someone else's experience,
Mhm.
or where I could be really present and really take in every aspect of it, and feel the nervousness if it was nervousness, and tell myself, like, is this nervousness or is it excitement?
Mhm.
And really enjoy it. Just really be super present with the experience. So I would absolutely do it again. I haven't done it again, but I would. Afterwards, it was nothing. It was a great lesson, right? It was like nothing that I expected. 100,000 times more pleasant. Really, sort of a life changing. It's so. I don't know if you've ever done it, but
I
it.
have.
Okay, that quiet when you first. I expected it to be loud and windy, like utter peace and quiet as you just stare out at this beautiful vista. That's a.
I My experience is a little bit different. So I don't like heights. And I have spent a lot of my adult life managing my fear of heights because I was in the army, and they make you climb stuff all the time for no logical reason other than you have to do it. And I got to the point where I was okay with like high rope courses. So if I was hooked onto something, like, not a problem. Zip lines, not a problem. All that stuff, not a problem. And I was like, okay, everyone goes, if you do a skydive, that will cure your fear of heights. I was like, uh-huh. Um, Anyway, I did a tandem skydive, but when you had silence as you left the plane, I had this fearful sound that came from the depth of my soul that I didn't know I could produce, that left my body as I left the plane. And I mean, it was fine. And obviously, as you say, it's perfectly safe. It's just clearly not something that I'm meant to do. And whereas, like, if I do high ropes, I get like a bit of adrenaline rush, like you say, chase the adrenaline. I love all that stuff. Whitewater rafting, love it. When I landed, I felt nothing because I had nothing left to feel because I had used up all the emotions on the way down, and I was just exhausted and ready for a nap. Um, I mean, I probably would do it again. I did it for charity as well, but I didn't get over my fear of heights. But I confirmed that these things are doable, and I didn't have a meltdown as such. I was in control, apart from that sound that left my body as I left the airplane.
Right.
But I didn't sort of I didn't find one with the world, sadly. That's just my experience, though.
Well, I mean, you love neuroscience. I love neuroscience. I will say, probably like a terrible way to try to overcome like a true fear.
Oh, yeah,
That's a different.
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
But we live and we learn, and I think for me, and this does go back to the brain sort of things, is the more experiences you have, the more resilient you do become. And I think that is something we can both agree on. And it's also okay to have limits of the things that you enjoy and don't enjoy.
100%. And like you said, you've taught yourself I can do a tremendously fear-inducing activity and live through it, which doesn't make it enjoyable. It just
Yeah.
tells you, yeah, I can live through this. It still is awful.
But there's still a part of me that wants to do, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, wing walking. So on
Oh,
the old
yes.
biplanes. And like, there's a part of me that actually wants to do that.
Wow.
There's a part which is like, why would you do this to yourself, Pippa? Like, what's going on there? Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, with your version of the skydive, it sounds like you had an amazing experience. But I think, again, it links back into sort of your coaching approach of, finding those limits and challenging yourself, but in a healthy way, right?
Right, right. Not putting yourself in a state of, right, absolute shock. Yeah.
No. So, and then you moved on to sort of, you combine, what I love about the work you do is you combine the psychotherapy, the psychology and neuroscience, and also with the structure around this. And let's talk about what that means.
Sure. And I also feel like what I appreciate about coaching above and beyond sort of the standard American therapy, which I'm absolutely for, and I think more of it is better. But for me personally, when I think about should I switch? Should I get my recertifications up and go back into therapy? What I appreciate about coaching is it's very action based. We're
Mm.
always about figuring out what's the action that we need to take to move things forward. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you take the action, sometimes you don't. Like always learning. I mean, we just sort of talked about that. Always learning, always using every experience to sort of learn more about ourselves. But also, I feel like there can be some deep compassion within that. So, this is how the brain works. This is psychology. However, we're humans. We're not just a bunch of neurons firing. We have all this emotion and history. And so I definitely extend to my clients and myself a great deal of compassion. Like this can be hard. There are certain
Mm.
things you can do. There are certain very simple things when you understand why the brain encourages us to go in certain directions versus others. And then we can step back and be a participant in that versus just like going for the ride, but also knowing I'm going to go back. I'm going to relapse. I'm going to go back to my same comfy habits and having great compassion for that, even when your comfy habits are taking you the complete opposite direction of where you want to be. That's,
Yeah.
when clients come to me and they have all that self-loathing and beating themselves up and I don't know what's wrong with me and I know what I should do and I never do it and I always make the wrong choice. Well, because there's so much neurology behind our brain wanting us to be comfortable and safe. Have compassion for that. I even have I'll introduce you to, this is Anxious Mouse. A dear friend created him for me, but I sort of
Oh.
use this as the personification of that voice in our head. It's just a simple little mouse with a teeny tiny little pea-sized brain that just is always looking for
Mm.
danger, but he misinterprets what is truly dangerous. And when we can have compassion, that's why he's so cute. Like when we can have compassion for that voice and understand my brain is taking me in a direction that maybe doesn't serve me, but that for some reason it sees as the route to safety, then okay, we thank that sweet little mouse, but then we take over with our more developed brains and we make some intentional choices.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Anyone who's just listened to the podcast has to now go and look at the video to see how cute that mouse is. Just when it comes
Well,
out.
okay, a little side thing about Anxious Mouse. So I've been using him for years and years and years, and um, I've done a lot of, back during COVID, I did a lot of very large groups on Zoom. And so it's very hard to see the faces when it's a big, large group. But I spoke to my daughter's high school parents organization several times. And so I would be someplace like the grocery store and people would look at me and be like, I know you from somewhere. And I just can't place you. And I couldn't place them either. And then they would say, oh, you're the Anxious Mouse lady. So I'm sort of unofficially the Anxious Mouse lady with a lot of people whom I can't even recognize, but sports teams and different groups have all gotten the Anxious Mouse talk because he is cute. Like you can't not help. You're like, oh. And so when people say to me things like, that voice in my head, I get so angry at it and I like yell at it. I'm like, whoa, it looks like this. Don't yell at him.
I love it. And to be honest, in terms of representation, that's so true. So what we're talking about really is the amygdala, which is a tiny, tiny almond-shaped size of your brain, which is causing all these problems. So I love the analogy because it puts it into concept. When you look at yourself versus a mouse, that proportion is the same as the part of your brain that is doing this to you. And understanding as well that, you don't have to be controlled by that part of the brain. It is tiny. It is really small. It's just trying to help. We just need to give it some feedback of what's helpful and what's not helpful. So it's wonderful.
Exactly. I love that word feedback, right? And that's the thing is it really is part of us. So we don't want to I had read in a book once a quote like when you're at war with yourself, you can never win. So it
Mm,
is part of us. It might be a small part of our brain, but it truly is part of us. And when we have all this hatred and anger and animosity towards it, we're expressing that towards ourselves. But it is
mm.
only part. It is only a small part. There are other parts. So we need to give everybody a fair shot at helping to drive the boat, so to speak. So
Definitely. Now, with incorporating neuroscience into coaching as well, it's a very different approach from many other coaches. And do you find you have a particular kind of people who come to you now because of the combination of methods, or do people not understand that's what you're doing? Like, who do you like to work with?
I definitely do. So when I first started working out, I really wanted to work with middle-aged women in transition. Oftentimes, a lot of, my kids were getting older. And so it was the conversation among my peer group about empty nests, all this fear around empty nest and not really knowing it, like not wanting to go to therapy. It didn't seem like a therapy thing, but not like needing something to help make that transition, find a second chapter, figure out what they like. They've maybe been out of the workforce, or maybe they have more time and they could pursue work more with more vigor and effort. But what I discovered was they cared less about science, but also this was a group of people who oftentimes didn't invest in themselves.
Mm,
And so I ended up working my main, besides athletes, I do have quite a few athletes I work with, and they're great because they get, they understand training. They understand I want to improve at something, so I must take action.
hmm.
So they're so easy to work with. I just love a good athlete, to work with a good athlete. But I end up working with a lot of women, professional women who maybe appreciate science. I try not to be all science, but I try to give people a piece of science so you
Hmm.
understand what's going on is normal and typical. This is how brains work, but let's hack how brains work in your favor. So people who are usually professionals, who are willing to invest in themselves because it is investment of time and money, and who want to learn. They like the idea of learning, being a part. They're not looking for a magic wand solution to something. They want to learn about a way of living or thinking that's going to help them then progress in their career, their personal life, make changes, prepare for retirement, sell a business, build a business. So that does tend to be the typical client.
Brilliant. And I think that's the learning part is always something that really fascinates me because, again, you and I discussed this before, but learning is so important to personal growth and to moving forward. And I've always found it very strange where I have clients come to me and go, almost, I don't want to do anything. I want you just to make it better. And you're like, well, that's not how it works. Like I can't wave a wand over you and make you be the person you want to be. You have to go on that journey. And I'm always surprised by the number of people who still think today that it can work like that. So what does the learning path with you and your clients look like? What does that journey look like for them?
Well, first of all, I think when someone does come to me and that is the type of relationship they're looking for, you and I sort of talked a little bit earlier about the great variety of people who use the term coach.
Mhm.
And I do feel that there is a kind of coach for everyone. I don't coach with crystals or oils or necessarily energy. And I do think that that figuring out like how you use your energy or those types of things, but I'm not like an energy healer. So if someone comes to me and they really just don't want, and I know some coaches have giant binders of worksheets and things like that. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. You will have to do work. You're going to have an action step every single session because neuroplasticity is something we understand about the brain now, but the brain changes through effortful use of these different neurotransmitters. So you got to use them in a new way to make new connections. But if you're not interested in any of that, then I often suggest I do have some coaching friends who do use different types of modalities. You might be more interested in that type of modality where it feels like a very heart-centered, I'm not going to say mystical, but there certainly are. I do know some coaches who take a very mystical path. And if that feels more authentic to the journey you're looking for, great. I will not be offering that. I will be sort of like how'd this week go? What went well? Well, we always celebrate first. Always celebrate. Always, 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 because it is just so easy to get to, it is the natural brain way to notice the negatives. So we always celebrate. And then we dig into what went great this week. Where did things not work so well? Do you remember your thoughts? How did you feel? Let's dig into that and then create a new experience in that situation. How can we create a new experience next time? And then you got to practice it, which is, again, back to like this athlete clients. They know practice, so they get it. Like, what am I practicing this week? It takes practice.
Absolutely. I had a lady I worked with. She was amazing. She was the GB over 50s gymnastic team. And what she could do with someone over 50 that I couldn't even do as like a 5-year-old type of thing. She just flips and jumps and everything else. But we worked a lot on, she hit a bit of a wall because she got injured. And of course, she's older and injuries take longer. But like you say, she practiced and she just won the European Championships, I think, for the over 50s group. So but she practiced, she put in the work and I'm still like, how do I do a roly-poly? Like I'm at that level of gym and she's like all over the place. But anyway, what is your biggest concern working as a coach at the moment? We talked about this before we came on. There's a lot of people who I worry about in terms of the depth of their experience and qualifications. But what are you seeing that you sort of would advise people to look for if they're looking for a coach?
And I would say it even goes deeper than that, because I know of coaches who do have a wealth of background, training, and experience, but they give a one-size-fits-all. It's their program. And I've certainly taken all the marketing. I get very distracted by all the shiny things like, oh, this is the key to marketing, and this is the path to easier client acquisition. But I always remind myself, it's not about me. It's about the client's journey. And I certainly know a lot of coaches who are very successful, who have created, this is my program and everyone does this program. And while there are certainly some standard things that everyone can benefit from learning and practicing, I just hesitate when it's sort of like, okay, 10,000 American dollars and you get this beautiful binder and you get my book. Well, I have a book too, but you get your beautiful binder and you get the book and you go through my signature program. And I've actually had a few clients who were a little wary to work with me because they had worked with previous coaches and had gotten that kind of experience where like you have lots of homework, but it has nothing to do with the experience you're having. It's, this is week 3. This is week 3 homework, or read these 5 books. You have to read these 5 books. And they're like, gosh, I'm a working mom. I'm already like, part of my problem is I'm overwhelmed. And now you're saying, read these 5 books. So I guess I would just say you need a good fit, whether it's a therapist or a coach. You do need a good fit, and you need somebody who you feel sees your struggles and who is going to craft a journey that helps you, that continues to evolve as you evolve. I have clients I've worked with for almost 10 years. We might see each other every month, but we see each other for 10 years once a month because life is a journey, and we continue to craft the program, the sessions, the coaching to match the journey. So I guess I would say make sure you feel comfortable with this person, you feel like you're getting benefit, that you're being seen. And a good coach should be able to take whatever your experience is and help you learn how to use strategies for that experience versus expecting you to fit into their program.
I love that. It's super important. And again, I think that the internet is fantastic because it's opened up the world and we can talk across the ocean. But it also means that you can claim a lot of things without anything to back it up. Or you can take a model from elsewhere and not know how to apply it. And the people I work with the most, just like in the coaching world, are people who I know have qualifications, experience, and that bespoke approach, because I think that's the thing that makes a difference. Because otherwise, it's one of the frustrations I have in the UK with the UK mental health approach. I don't know if it's similar in the US, but in the NHS, if you've got any kind of mental health problem, chances are the first thing they'll do is put you on an online CBT course. So cognitive behavioral therapy, for those who don't know. And CBT is great for certain people in certain situations, but it isn't a one size fits all. And I sit there going, even if you just had like one other alternative at this point, like even that would help. But when you say everyone must do this one thing in this one way before you, it's like the gatepost to getting what you truly need, well, of course people are going to fail by the wayside. So it's a real challenge. And I'm sure it's the same in the US.
Right. Whatever is least expensive, most easily accessible nowadays with the internet and apps and being able to standardize things, right? Like what could be most easily standardized and provided to the most people the easiest. And to your point, like picking one thing. And then even if you just start with one thing and then a good therapist or coach would know like, okay, this seems to be where this doesn't work. What else can we add to that? But right, just to stick people with like, this is the thing we always start with. And I'm sure that leads to people feeling like the entire industry doesn't work or is a sham,
Right.
or it hurts the industry when people don't have successful experiences.
Yeah. No, I love that. Now you but quite recent history have just recovered from lung cancer. Is that correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
Let's talk about that a bit because
Yeah.
that
So
must have been fun.
that was not what I was expecting. Great opportunity though to practice good, healthy, positive mental skills. That's the spin I put on it. Yeah. So I'm, at the time, this was just last year, I was 55. I'm a never smoker. I'm a runner. I'm fitness. Obviously, given my first story, I was an athlete back since whenever, junior high, elementary school. I've never lived in a place with a lot of pollution. I don't have a family history. I don't have smokers in my family. I don't have a family history of cancer. All the things that people so desperately want to be like, that's why you got cancer. And as a woman, I think I'm speaking for myself, but I do feel like a lot of my friends, like when you have that annual mammogram, if you have in the US, we get annual mammograms.
Yeah.
You always have that moment. Like we know you get a certain age, you end up knowing people who've had breast cancer. So that always seems like it could be me. That could be me. Lung cancer was not on my radar screen at all. And I've become a bit of an advocate for testing and better understanding of who's at risk and what it looks like because mine was caught by accident. And that is the only reason I've had a super easy journey over the past year is because it was still stage 1B and I was a candidate for surgery and they just sucked out one lobe of my lung. And I had been assured by my very wonderful thoracic surgeon that I would be able to run and do everything the same as I used to do. You can live a full life without a full 5, in case not everybody knows, because most people don't. You have 5, you have 5 lung lobes. I have 4. I don't notice it. But what I've learned is that the fastest growing population of individual in the lung cancer community is a non-smoking, otherwise very healthy woman from about the 30 to 45 age range.
Oh, wow.
And nobody knows why yet. There are several common mutations that typically are found in these cancers. I did have one of these typical mutations in this woman population. And science is rapidly changing. So lung cancer is not the death sentence it was not long ago. There are all kinds of medications, obviously chemo and radiation. And my surgery was robotic. It was crazy. Like to hear about it, obviously I didn't. I wasn't conscious for it, but
thank goodness.
Yeah. I'm glad I missed it, but crazy, amazing what is possible. So it is changing, but because there's no symptoms usually until you're stage 4 and it's already spread to the bones, the spine, the brain, that makes outcomes a lot more difficult. So, and it's often misdiagnosed, even when there are some symptoms. Back pain is often a common symptom. So like you're a young woman with young children. Well, back pain's not uncommon. You're carrying children, you're carrying car seats. So that's often, they send you to PT and all kinds of things before you get a scan. Even a cough, even like a lingering dry cough. Well, first you try allergies, then you say maybe it was pneumonia, you didn't even realize you had, or did you have COVID? All these things that are sort of checked before a very simple CT scan of the chest, which nowadays is much lower radiation than it used to be. So, in conjunction with my thoracic surgeon at USC here in Southern California, he's trying to start a foundation, and I'm working with him to really raise awareness that non-smokers get cancer. Young non-smoking women are the fastest growing population. There's a whole host of odd symptoms people do not associate with cancer, or, they just right away, because you're a young, healthy non-smoker, don't even think to look at it. But a quick scan to just eliminate that as a possibility would really help this segment of the population who's getting lung cancer.
That sounds something super important. My mum had cancer when she was 65, but it was on her spine. And it was stage 4 when they found it because it'd been backache. So everyone goes, well, you're older, it's backache. And the reason I bring this up is she's obviously fine, total attention seeker, got over it, all the rest of it. But she happened to go in to hospital at the same time with 2 people exactly the same sort of stage, and both of them died, and she did not. And now part of that I think is luck, but I do think a lot of it comes down to the mindset and the power of the brain. And so my mum at that time was still teaching. She's been a teacher her whole life. And it was April, I think it was 2014 it was. She said, I'm going back to work in September, going back for the new school year. And she did. And to get to that point, she had to go through all her radiation, all her chemo. She also had to relearn how to walk because they only found it when she woke up in the morning and couldn't walk because the spine had the cancer compressed her spine. And so again, and just she was very lucky that the NHS sort of took her in, did everything very, very quickly once they knew the problem was. But it's not a guarantee result even now. And this is 10 years on, it's still better and it's constantly improving. But I do think with women's medicine in particular, and you'll have read this, the number of papers I've read that go on, and if I had more time, I would have tested on women. You're like, why didn't you test on women? We are half the population. Maybe that's why we know why women are getting more lung cancer than not. If we just tested on women, but that's a different argument.
You touched on 2 great things there, right? Like I'm amazed how many times I read something, right, and it was sort of like, oh, but the symptoms are completely different in women, or it shows up very different in women. Like, well, why has no one? I mean, heart attacks, right? I mean, there's to do a scan of heart and lungs together because we always talk about what heart attack signs look like in men, but it usually comes up completely differently in women, and so. Women who have all these heart attacks who had no idea that they'd had any sort of signs or symptoms because they were thinking of all the things we always hear about men. So yes, like let's more medicine focused on women's health and mindset.
Absolutely.
You brought up mindset, and it's easy for me to sort of discount because I work on this stuff. It's not, it's not just the way I am. I actively work on always challenging my thoughts and testing my thoughts and asking myself if a thought is productive for me, if it's leading me someplace I want to go. And if not, like I'm going to make the conscious effort. So I put energy into this. But, and so, not to be like a attention seeker like your mom, but, my medical team loves me because they walk in, they're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. I made it through surgery. Like, I'm always going to find that, like, I walked around the hospital immediately after my lung had surgery. Like, how does that happen? That's a miracle. I don't know. Like, I'm always going to look for that. What's going to help me move forward? But so my doctors, it's easy for me to just sort of think like everybody thinks like this. And my doctors have said, we see it all the time. It does make a huge difference. And being positive doesn't guarantee a better result. But they said it's very clear to us that the people who come in with a very fatalistic attitude or are just going to be anxious about everything, or feeling like worried, always searching for like what's the worst possible scenario, they have worse outcomes. And they said absolutely our patients who are able to set a goal, push themselves, see the good, celebrate the good that they have. I mean, even if I never ran again, I was like, but I'd be alive. But I also was like, well, they said I could run again. So I signed up for a 5K 3 months after surgery and I was fine. But my doctor said they see it all the time. It really does make a difference that your health outcomes are enhanced by believing in the possibility of a good outcome.
I love that. And I think for me, it links back to the point you raised about neuroplasticity earlier as well, the ability of the brain to sort of rewire itself and learn new things. And I have a very dear friend who is an amazing runner. And last summer of 2024, she also woke up one day with loads of pain in her legs. And she was due to do a marathon in Berlin in September. So she had all of August in all this pain. She said they couldn't run. She fought through it, ran the marathon, ran another marathon. She's been diagnosed with MS, unfortunately. But because at the time she was like, well, running is the thing I do, like running is the thing I care about. And she just didn't allow herself to not entertain a scenario where she couldn't run. And as a result, she's on some really amazing treatment in the UK where like, she gets like an injection once a month. And basically it's because she was so healthy, because her mindset was right, and because she basically already rewired her brain, she had kind of kept the MS at bay from where it got to. And now she has to manage her energy, but she's just on an ultra marathon. I mean, she's ridiculous.
Oh my
She's so
gosh.
talented. I know, right? Talk about overachiever. And she works as a physio, so she does understand the body as well. To me, it's another example of the power of the brain. It's not going to, we can't sit here and go, if you think good thoughts, everything will be okay. It absolutely isn't true. But if you shift how you see the world and how you approach the challenges that it brings to you, the brain will help you do with the rest. Like the brain is able to do a lot of that stuff. It can't necessarily cure cancer. It can't make everything, get rid of MS, but it can help you find a way of getting through it to the other side in a lot of cases. And with the right medical support behind you as well.
Absolutely. And when you're having these more productive thoughts, you're bathing yourself in neurotransmitters and neurochemicals that are helping you. It's like a cycle. You have the thoughts, you challenge your beliefs, you decide to believe in possibility, and then your neurotransmitters are released to flood yourself in more positive feelings and more energy. And again, right, it's not going to cure cancer. It's not going to potentially keep you from getting cancer. I did all these things beforehand. I still got lung cancer, but I gave myself the best possible chance of continuing to enjoy my life and get as far as I can with that challenge. And so it's a gift that keeps giving.
It snowballs. I do think, my husband, when we first met, he is like Captain Safety. I love him dearly. But he'd be like, what can go wrong in this situation? And I'd be like, hey, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. We've now reached a happy medium. And sometimes I worry about stuff that I never used to worry about. And then he worries less. So we're good. But his reflection the other week was, the more I do this, the more I see the positivity. I was like, exactly. It does snowball. But I think if you're not used to thinking that mindset at the start, you'll feel resistance because it's uncomfortable. It's not what you're used to doing. And you have
Right.
to kind of push through that to get to the other side.
And it can feel very fake, and there is a fine line. I'm absolutely not a fan of like a bunch of fake positivity or ignoring real challenges or tamping down negative emotions. Like feel all of it, but feel it and then let it pass through and decide what you want that next step to be, or recognize like there is danger in this situation and how could I best be prepared? And now I can live with the knowledge that I've prepared as well as I could, and I'm going to experience life. And chances are it will be positive, but if not, I'm prepared for that.
No, brilliant. So to bring it back around to a coach then, if someone wanted to work with you, find you, how can they do that?
Okay. Well, one thing I did mention, so the timing was kind of crazy. I literally just sent a manuscript, the final manuscript of a book I had been working on, to my editor the day before I got the cancer diagnosis. So
Oh, wow.
It's out. Your best year yet, weekly personal growth challenges to unlock your best self. And I have a weekly newsletter, and the book is very much like the weekly newsletter. Every week in my newsletter, I talk about either an experience I had or a client had or something I saw in a movie or something I experienced and why we do this thing. What's behind it? And I give a little neuroscience, like why this is normal. This is why we have these experiences. But then I give you a little challenge, something you could try super easy that week that will give you a new way to experience something or to try something or to shift your brain. So just as an example, I mentioned that I've been traveling. So this week, the newsletter was that I shared that I had just had this travel experience. And I said, though, I slowed down time. And why do I say I slowed down time? Well, there's neuroscience research that shows when you're having novel experiences and you're having emotions around them, those are the things that help the hippocampus put that experience into long-term memory. And these experiences, these little sort of pearls along our journey, help us feel like time is more expansive versus where you're going through your normal routine, which may be comfortable and normal and efficient and easy, but we like don't have anything to grab onto. So it just becomes this endless slog of sameness. And that's sort of how, as you get older, you're like, gosh, time goes so fast. People complain about it all the time, the older they get, but we're having less novelty in our lives. And so our brain has less things to mark as to give it a timestamp. So by traveling to new countries and having new experiences, I now have all these new memories that are going to help sort of slow down the experience of time for me. And so my weekly challenge was, you don't have to travel to a foreign country to do this. You could do something in your own house. You could do something the opposite order you usually do it in, or take a new route to work, or go to a restaurant that you've been meaning to go to and never gone, or go to your same restaurant, but order something you've never tried before. Give yourself a novel experience and then reflect on it later that evening. Sort of think about what was that like? How did it feel? Did I enjoy it? Was it hard? Was it something I want to continue doing, do more of? And really sort of solidify the memory and the experience of something novel. And by sprinkling this throughout our lives, we really do sort of help our lives feel like it's not just slipping away super fast. So my book, back to the book, is like as a collection of these, one for each week of the year. So you could certainly look up the book. My name is, super hard to pronounce and spell. I wish I had a nice, easy, Sally Jones. So I do have a website that is my name, Linda Kneidinger. If you can remember how to spell it, look it up. And on that website, I have some information about myself, about my coaching, about the book. And I do see one-on-one clients, and I do speak to groups, both virtually and in person. So, and I actually answer my own real email. And that is listed on my website. But it's my coaching, I call my coaching practice Ultimate You Coaching. So all my stuff, I do also have a website, Ultimate You Coaching, and my email is just linda@ultimateyou-coaching.com. So I'm always happy to have a conversation with someone about something they're curious about, something they'd like to work on for one-on-one clients or to speak to groups. And if you just want the no contact way, then try out the book, and you'll get 52 different peaks inside the brain and the things that we all struggle with, and a little challenge to help you get over that hurdle, get around that obstacle.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. And I think I was just going to reflect on the time thing. Everyone has a blurred memory of the pandemic for that very reason, is that it was the same every day, whether wherever you were in the world, whether you had a good experience or a bad experience. But that is a prime example of how we all lost track of time. And so I think learning to have these novel experiences, if you take nothing away from this interview, but just have a novel experience, I think that will transform your life anyway, because it's so important to find these points in time that mean something more to you. I love that.
Absolutely. I'm getting to the age where I'm starting to worry if I'm having normal memory aging issues or it's something different. So I'm always super conscious of try something new, have a novel experience, pay attention to your environment, really make the brain work.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think no matter what age you are, we've got to do that anyway, but definitely so we enjoy our time more and don't feel like it's moving away from us. I love that. Linda, thank you ever so much. I could chat to you for ages, as I'm sure you know. We'll put everything in the show notes so everyone can find your links. But honestly, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here today. And I look forward to seeing what else you do in the next future coming years.
Thank you. Same with you. I really enjoyed this and can't wait to see where you take your background.
Thank you.